protest against the fact that the government officially withdrew the minimum support price for wheat. And this was linked to pressures from the International Monetary Fund, IMF, to cut market regulation in the agricultural sector. Minimum support price mechanism is a long-standing policy that has provided a critical safety net for millions of farmers. This rollback in price protection has triggered a dangerous ripple effect across Pakistan's agricultural and food systems. Smallholder farmers, in particular, are now exposed to severe market volatility with no more guaranteed floor prices. This will affect the income of millions of poor rural families, typically the most affected by food insecurity. But also this will affect the capacity of small-scale farmers to produce healthy food for the local markets. So this example shows the impact of the decisions of financial institutions on food security and nutrition, in particular in the context of high public debts. All over the world, these institutions and creditor countries are attacking people's food sovereignty. They are imposing structural adjustment programs and pushing governments to give the priority to export-oriented productions while importing the food that their population need. This leads to high level of dependencies towards extremely volatile international markets, to increased vulnerability towards speculation on highly financialized markets, and to huge waves of hunger crises like what we saw in 2008 and 2022. As small-scale producers' organizations, we have been demanding food sovereignty. That is the right of all people and states to develop public policies to protect and strengthen local production, local food production, adapted to the diversity of cultures and practices. So what kind of financing is necessary for food sovereignty? First, what should be given the priority in financing? We believe that fundings should be directed towards public policies that protect and strengthen local food production based on numerous small-scale food producers. For example, public policies of agrarian reform to ensure the right to land, public policies of market regulation, for example, public stocks or the minimum support price programs, policies that support the transition towards agroecology through training programs. The subsidies going to big private companies has increased a lot over the last decades. It is very problematic and should be reduced. Instead, it is key that governments invest in appropriate infrastructure and public services adapted to the need of small-scale food producers. It can be roads, it can be slaughterhouses, wheels to ensure access to water or electrification. These investments should be done after consulting small-scale producers and ensuring a proper participation of rural people. Ensuring a stable and positive environment for small-scale food producers not only provides solutions against hunger, but also solutions in face of the crisis of inequalities, climate, and biodiversity. Second, where should the money come from? It matters a lot to know where the fundings come from. Food sovereignty should go along with financing sovereignty. We are not against international support or aid programs, but these programs should not create more dependencies. IMF and World Bank programs have had dramatic impacts on food sovereignty by providing fundings linked to structural adjustment programs. They have led to the dismantling of market regulation, of public services, and of agrarian reform. So we call for public and citizen-led audits of the debts in order to cancel odious debts which have not been democratically decided. Public-private partnerships also often have negative consequences on small-scale food producers, giving the priority to the interest of agribusiness companies and foreign companies. And this leads to land grabbing, water grabbing, and sometimes the grabbing of the local markets by transnational companies. When countries become dependent on US aid or other international aid, this often is a counterpart for market access or red carpet for the transnational companies of huge companies from the northern countries to access resources such as minerals. And when suddenly this aid stops, it leaves the countries from the global south in a very precarious situation. For this reason, countries should focus on developing a tax system that generates sustainable resources for their national budget. Taxing big companies and very rich people should be a priority. Tariffs, if used properly, can also generate fundings for governments while protecting the local production. Finally, a thriving rural economy can also participate to strengthening the national fiscal system. This means a clear stop to corruption that is undermining so many countries in the global north and in the global south. The states should work for the people, not for the billionaires. To conclude, we see that the international money is getting tight. So where should it be invested first in order to support food sovereignty? First, in supporting a strong civil society, and in particular, social movements in rural areas that are able to assure accountability on a high level of probity in how national public policies are built and implemented. And also, civil society can help monitor fiscal policies in a very efficient way to ensure the fight against hunger and malnutrition. Second priority, this international funding should support spaces for cooperation between different countries in order to identify which are the most effective public policies against hunger and for food sovereignty. And CFS is certainly one of the spaces which should be supported alongside with the UN Decade on Family Farming. So funding United Nations bodies is important, in particular those spaces which provide inclusivity for small-scale food producers organizations. Thank you very much.